over 35 years, thank you, Blair. For over 35 years, Earth Team volunteers have dedicated their time and talents to helping NRCS protect and improve the nation's natural resources. Get into screen share there. Virginia's soil and water districts have really been a key partner in that effort and have been frequently recognized for their activities to support conservation in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we're really proud of some of the recent recognition that has happened on that front. NRCS wrapped up this year's National Volunteer Week back in April by recognizing Earth Team Award winners, including who you see on our screen, our Prince William Soil and Water District for their water quality program. Really very excited about this recognition. Certainly didn't quite get to celebrate in the group format that we normally do, but deserves to be shouted from the rooftops of what a wonderful program and the support and the people that have been brought to the table. And thank Dr. Martinez with NRCS to visiting the Soil and Water District and making sure that recognition happened, at least on the local front. So we're very proud of our Prince William Soil and Water District. Wanted to shout out though, I know many of you are on the line. This picture is a bit grainy, unfortunately, but I think you even have Kathleen with our Virginia Dare Soil and Water District. This year's recognition is not the first for Virginia. At the national level, a couple years back, 2019, I believe, might have been 2020, that our Virginia Dare Soil and Water District was recognized. Virginia Dare is a staff of two. Kathleen and Corey are a powerhouse and organized over 117 partners to contribute almost 1,300 hours of service for their farm days, their recycling, their education to Chesapeake school students, right? Our Earth Team program is doing great work in soil and water districts across the Commonwealth. And I really only highlight two. Our youth conservation camp wrapped up last week, and regionally, that's been a program that has worked with NRCS Earth Team. There's so many value and benefits to the Earth Team program. And while the recognition piece is one we really like to celebrate, especially at our annual conference in December, which is again in person at the Hotel Roanoke, December 4th through 6th. Put it on your calendar, save the date. It's going to be a great opportunity for networking, not just among districts, but again with our partners like NRCS, and celebrating, we hope, Earth Team. Really celebrating Earth Team if we can all really get behind and reinvigorate the program and understand its value, its purpose, spread the word further, get some additional folks signed up, and really get some great nominees in. So wanted to do the shout out for where we've been with Earth Team and the excellent recognition, but wanted to toss it over to Barbara Bowen with NRCS to really facilitate, lead the remaining of the program, and introduce our keynote speaker. Barbara, thank you for helping pull this all together for us today.
Oh, well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of our state conservationist, Dr. Edwin Martinez, I'd like to thank each of you for taking time to attend this joint training session on managing individual and group volunteers. The information provided today should be beneficial for NRCS staff and district partners of all experience levels, because we have made some recent changes in the way that impact the way that we register new volunteers and track their service. Time at the outset, but we hope that you will agree that the payoff is worth the effort. Our Earth only helps us stretch available resources to provide exceptional customer service to Virginia landowners, but also serves as a training ground for the next generation of conservationists. Virginia has been a leader in using volunteers to support natural resource protection, and is proud to have many former Earth Team members now serving in offices across the state. We've also garnered much recognition along the way, including the national awards that Kendall spoke of earlier. So we also extend our congratulations again to the Prince William Soil and Water Conservation District. Honestly, today we are struggling to rebuild what was once a very robust program. It's been hit hard by COVID, like so many things that we did in the past. We've got to go at it a different way now. The new operational posture caused our numbers to really dwindle over the past few years. So it's more important than ever for us to pull together and ramp up our activities and have at least one volunteer working in every office. We had 100% for many, many years and haven't been able to get back to that yet. It does take time to recruit, train, and manage volunteers, and many of us don't feel that we have that time to spare. But please know that your area volunteer coordinators stand ready to assist you in any way possible and want to hear from you. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Tony Flax, who came over from NRCS to the Farm Production and Conservation Business Center to help manage the Earth team. And she's going to share an overview of the revised process and the rationale behind it. And then she's going to take your questions on the information she's provided. So welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Barbara. Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be here today. Earth Team is a program that is very, very near and dear to my heart. I came on to NRCS through Earth Team. I started the apprenticeship in 1997 in Kansas, and that's how I got associated with NRCS and knew that this is where I ultimately wanted to end up. So through the years, not only was I an Earth Team volunteer, I then started and became the area coordinator for the Northwest part of Kansas as an area coordinator. I did that for several years, and then I started in as the state coordinator for Kansas after the other state coordinator retired. So I have a lot of background in being in your position and working at the field level in trying to build up these programs and to get the volunteers. When we went from NRCS to the Business Center, I was a state coordinator. So I stuck with it and helped out to maintain the program as we went through some adjustments. And I'll show you here what those adjustments were. And then from there, I took a detail and then took this job as well. So I did see that my one of my cohorts colleagues, Sanaz Arjamand, is on today with us. So she will probably also help answer any questions. Sanaz?
Oh, thank you, Tony. Hi, everybody. I'm glad that I was able to join in today. Tony is the real expert. I'm a bit newer to USDA and to the National Volunteer Program, but we've been working on it for a little over a year now. So I'm here to answer any questions that I can. And thanks again for putting this all together.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. And Kendall, we appreciate your time and helping us get the information out, get the word out so that we can build the best program for you and help you to build that program. Know that we are always here for you if you have questions, and we will go ahead and get started. So I'm going to share my screen here, and hopefully it won't be too terribly bad, death by PowerPoint, you know. Oops, no, not screen two. All right, Barbara, can you guys see the screen okay?
Not yet.
How about
It's
now?
coming. It's there.
Wonderful. Okay, so this is the joint meeting with Earth Team. I see a lot of soil and water conservation districts on board. We've got some NRCS people out there. So I'm going to just talk in general to all of you about the Earth Team and where we are today. A little bit of an agenda. We're going to do kind of a background on Earth Team administration and where we've come. And then some updates to some program administration tools and forms. And then we're going to do a little bit of a review of policy and procedures, and of course, have a question and answer session if I don't get to your question during the presentation. Do not mind at all being informal. So Barbara will stop me if a question is related, or if a question comes up, and we want to get you guys the answers. So we'll just continue to go forward with making sure we get those and provide you those answers. Okay, whoops. So just a little bit of a background. In 2019, as you guys are probably already aware, the NRCS Earth Team was actually moved to the FPAC Business Center. And when we did that, we moved with no employees. So the state coordinator we had, or the national coordinator we had retired. Her staff had pretty much retired before that. So when the volunteer program was moved into FPAC, there really wasn't any employees. We'd had no continuity to continue with the program. So we kind of had that stumbling block there. And then of course, COVID came along. So there's been a few little quirks in the last few years, but there's always been somebody at the helm. We've always had somebody kind of working to move the program forward as best we could. So we had a couple of state coordinators, myself included, and a new branch chief that stepped up to maintain the program. In 2020, we had two detailees. One of them was from the Department of Treasury, and then the other was myself. And then we had hired two people to make up the staff. Well, in 2001, all of that staff and the branch chief turned over. So we basically had to start over again. And that's when I was hired on for my position. And then we brought on Sanaz and Eric as well to work with the program, move it forward, and bring on FSA, RMA, and the Business Center so that they can have a good program as well. So yeah, myself, Eric Hansen, Sanaz, and then Amber Ross is our stakeholder relations branch chief. So she's our boss and who we report to. And we've been able to make lots of progress in the last year, 2 years here, from where we were coming in 2019 when we really didn't have anybody. So basically, Earth Team was to be the basis for a FPAC-wide national volunteer program. The goal was basically to keep NRCS's Earth Team for NRCS and then build out programs for FSA, RMA, and Business Center, which are also going to be structured for their purposes. So this is going to be a little bit different than our Earth Team, but we also have then the ability to work together through our sister agencies and of course with the conservation districts to get even more experience out there, to get even more help through our producers through the volunteer program. We're looking at reducing cost of the program. And basically they're going to do that by consolidating to one national staff under the Business Center for all of the programs. So where we used to have NRCS had their own national staff, everybody, all the three of us are national staff for all the programs. And we are building a new tracking system that is going to be for all of the agencies. NRCS is the only one using it at this time, but hopefully as we move forward here in the next few months, we're looking at launching the new national volunteer program at the beginning of the new fiscal year. There are a little bit of hiccups there, but we're working on it, continuing to work on it. And this volunteer tracking system will help us keep everybody's information in one place. So then, of course, all of our paperwork and all of our rules and policies, we're going to also be the same across all the agencies. So that, you know, if a volunteer comes in for NRCS and they say, hey, I want to go work for a day for FSA, or I want to also volunteer for RMA, we can do that. We have the ability to go through different agencies to be volunteers. And that just gives our volunteer more experience. And it helps us because they might be bringing something else to the table that we didn't know about or think about to start with. So I am very excited to broaden the range of the volunteer program and to build up what I know NRCS does and the conservation districts do with the Earth Team program. So the policy side of things, really policy has not changed. At this point, most of the policy that was there before is still in place. There are, a few quirks when it comes to like who can drive a government vehicle. Our volunteers still can, but they also have to take the online AgLearn driver's safety, can't think of the name of it right now, but the training that's online for them. So, those things have come with the changes of FPAC, come with the new fleet that we have. And so there are policy changes that have come down that we'll have to work on as we go. But right now, for what I need you guys to be aware of is the procedures and the forms that have changed. Our policy, we're still working on the same policy until it gets updated, and the procedures and forms are what have probably changed or are different than what you remember or have been using in the past few years. So Earth Team volunteer program policy is found in the NRCS General Manual, and that is GM 360 Part 428 and subparts A through J. Anything you ever wanted to know about Earth Team is in there as far as the policy goes. We are in the process of a new directive for policy. It will be an FPAC directive, so it'll go for all the agencies. Again, we want to have the same rules. So if there's a question, we can talk to each other across the hallway or across the aisle, across the building, and provide that information and help each other out. So you will be seeing that come down. And then of course, I fully expect that NRCS will base their general manual on what they see coming from the new directive, and they will have eyes on it before it is approved as well. That's one of the pieces of the review process. So, and I know this has kind of been a question that's come up a lot, is the benefits to the volunteers. So policy-wise, there's two big benefits that we can offer to our volunteer, or we have to offer to our volunteers. It's workman's comp and tort coverage. Volunteers are never considered federal employees unless it comes to workman's compensation and tort. So we have to make sure that we have all the information available to us if something would happen. These benefits are laid out by law, and we have to have that information to administer the claims if need be. We cannot waive these benefits in exchange for less data collection. They will not allow us to. This is very clearly written out in policy for all the agencies with their Earth Team program or with their volunteer program. So I know that's been a big question. Yes, we don't have the ability to not offer those. It is required that we offer it by law. So the big new thing, guys, and I know you're all hearing about this right now, is our volunteer tracking system. It is big because it's a big change for us. We did have a legacy system. I believe it was put in 2009, but it was also decommissioned in October of 2020. We worked with the Park Service on that. They were the ones that had the backbone and the internet place for it, and we had to decommission it. But it was one of those programs in which all of our time entry people had to have a password to log in, and they could enter time in basically 3 ways. We could have a one-time group, which I know a lot of people used, where total hours and total volunteers were entered into the tracking system, but they didn't have any names associated with them in the tracking system. They did, however, have to have a list of volunteers in a group folder, because that goes along then with the tort and workman's comp claims, or if we had anything else that happened during the day, we had to have all that information. So that one-time group, and I said, I know a lot of people use that. A reoccurring group, basically, we would enter the group information as far as the group name and the contact people. And then we would enter our individual names for all of the individual volunteers, and we would put the hours into the system. In that system, we could add or archive members as needed. So it was kind of a revolving door when it came to who we had in those groups. But again, we also had to have a file for all of our groups, which we had a list of names and the times worked to be kept in that folder. And then the last way we could enter time in the legacy system was in a one-time or is an individual. And so it's just, we know one person with all their information, their hours, their timesheets, all that was kept in a folder in the office. And so that if we had something come up, or if there was a question about using a government vehicle, or whether we had to file a workman's comp or a tort claim, or anything that we needed to know about that person was in their individual file in the office. So some of the issues then that we had with that legacy system was that it would count one person as many different people if they were put into different groups or in as an individual in multiple counties. So a lot of times what would be happening was I could be volunteering, and I'm just going to use Barbara and Sanaz as an example. Barbara would be the group leader in one-time group, and Sanaz would be a group leader in another one-time group, and they both put me in their lists. But there was never a way to go back and said, okay, Tony participated in field day 1 and in county 2 in a education day, and she had a total of 20 hours. Well, if you're in the one-time group, we were never able to associate those hours in the system to start with. In a reoccurring group, we could. So you could go and you could click and say, oh, well, here is group A, Tony's in there, so she had 5 hours in there. Then we'd have group X over here, and but there was no way to connect those. So they would be counting each individual, maybe if up to 5 times or as many times as somebody would put them in the system. And we didn't ever know, there wasn't a way to track if they were in the system already or not. So our volunteer counts were not accurate at all. So our accountability wasn't very good. We had a general idea, but the accuracy was not there. So that was one of the issues. And then again, we couldn't get an accurate count of a volunteer's total hours. So, little Mary Sue might be looking to apply for a scholarship, and she's like, oh, I've volunteered at this and this and this. And she's wanting her total volunteer hours and kind of a background of what she did, but we may not be able to find all of that for her. So those were some things that we were running into with the legacy tracking system that we couldn't get around. And then of course we did not have all of the contact information that we needed. Sometimes we wouldn't even have full names. So a lot of those things were coming up, and we needed more accurate tracking on those items. And then again, like I said, that system was actually fairly old when it came to technology. So we were starting to get multiple performance issues we're developing, and we had been probably 3 years without a developer or anybody that could even work on the system. So even back in like 2018, 2017, we were already talking about getting a new tracking system because we knew we were having issues. So, that kind of came before the business center changeover happened. So this is a big deal. This has been huge in our transition with the volunteer program. So what's new? I mean, I'm telling you about the old stuff. So what's new, you know? So in 2020, we actually got to finally start working on our new tracking system. The new system is called the Volunteer Tracking System. It is a ServiceNow based program. And one of the reasons we went with ServiceNow, or the USDA said we were going to go with ServiceNow, is the ability to interconnect with other agents or with other programs that are also using ServiceNow, as well as a lot of the stuff you guys were getting ready to use was being done in ServiceNow. So it keeps the same basis and the same base program to use as we go forward. So it also, like I said, it also lines up with those other programs in ServiceNow, such as HR onboarding, which is we're going to talk about, comes into play for us here in a few, you know, kind of down the road as we go. So in 2001, in April, we were able to put our new system up. So it's the first time you guys got to look at the new system, and it overwhelmed you. And I totally understand that. I was working on it, building it. I'm at the heart of building that program, as is the rest of my colleagues. And we are trying to, you know, build it to what we see that's where things are going in the future, but are also where you guys need now, and for you guys to have that information available in front of you. So, you know, we went through a whole bunch of training in 2001 as we started bringing up the new program, the new tracking system. So, you know, the other one decommissioned in October of 2020. We had a time gap in there before April 2001 when we had the new tracking system. I know it is overwhelming, but I am very excited about the new tracking system. There's so much more that we can do with it than we could before. It gives us a lot of, I guess, good quality information that we can use not only to help our volunteers and provide more benefit to our volunteers, but for us to be more accurate in what we are sending and saying that we are doing. So when we set up the system, there was several requirements that not only us as a staff had felt were important, but as dictates were coming down to us from other agencies, including Homeland Security. So we wanted it to be a link pass logon, so that anybody that has a link pass and is put into the system can log on to it. Make that easier. It's another password you don't have to try to worry about having. And we wanted each volunteer to have their own profile so that we could get an accurate count on who our volunteers were, how many volunteers we had, and on their hours. So we also wanted to make sure that because of the link pass and onboarding requirements that we knew were coming down the pike, we wanted to make sure that you guys had an available checklist that you could go through on screen to help you make sure that you have everything, so that we don't miss something, or you're trying to think, okay, you know, where do I go to find this? It's right there in the tracking system, and you can see what you've done or what you've put into the system. And of course, the goal was to eventually work in conjunction with HR on their onboarding system, because, you know, we could see the writing on the wall that eventually those people that are going to need a link pass card or be a volunteer at that level would have to go through that process. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more kind of down the line. So these were things that we were thinking as we were going through and building this new system. And then beans the 301A is basically our application form, or the form that we're using to gather information and be the agreement between us and our volunteers. We wanted to eventually make that to where you can go to the scanner and scan that in and upload it, so that you don't have to manually add everything. So, you know, a lot of the blanks you see in the volunteer tracking system are just that. They are from that form, which, slide it in and populate all of that for you. So these are big things to come that we have talked about and really want to make your job easier. But one step at a time as we get there, of course, unfortunately. But that's our thinking in the direction that we were going with the tracking system, is to be able to, where you don't have to manually update all the information all the time. Of course, and then bringing on FSA, RMA in the business center. That was key. So we are in the process of building that out right now. It's going to look the same way your guys's does, as far as basically we're just going to be able to put in there, this is FSA's hours or this is RMA's hours. It's going to look the same for all the agencies because that's what we want. We want continuity as we go forward. All right, so issues with the new tracking system. It's still not 100% complete. And this is something we are going to, yes.
I have a question.
Oh, great.
Share the question with you. Do the volunteers need computer access to be able to log hours?
No. So that is an excellent question. When it comes to logging hours, we do that as volunteer coordinators. You've got your area coordinators, Barbara's a state coordinator, Laura's a state coordinator, basically, I think, right, Barbara? They are going to help you log those hours. And a lot of you may already have access. I am going to defer to you on this, Barbara. Do your soil and conservation districts help log all the hours? Is there someone in
Not
this
to my
office?
knowledge. We have our 4 area coordinators and they collect the hours and log them in and can share the stats with our district partners.
Wonderful. So all of our states do things differently. See, that was another thing about making this system to where it could be flexible, is because of the flexibility that the different states using the system work. So basically right now, your hours get turned over to one of your 4 area coordinators and they log it for you. So our volunteers don't have to worry about logging any hours themselves whatsoever. Down the line, that may be a possibility. We haven't counted that out, but we would have a public facing screen for that to happen for those volunteers that do not have a LinkPass card. And I'll get into the details of who has to have what down the line, but really, unless they're to a point where, they're an individual volunteer that is in the office, they're doing lots of things as far as computer access, we're probably not going to need a LinkPass card for them. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we move down the line, but excellent question. I hope I answered it completely enough. So we don't have a complete system yet. We're still building it. And we are competing with other applications. So we take time on the development team when it's our turn. So sometimes change might come fairly slow when it comes to the system, but I guarantee you I've got your back and I am pushing, Sanaz is pushing, Eric is pushing, Amber's pushing. We're pushing to get time on the developer's time so that we can get this information or changes we need as quickly as they allow us. So benefits to this system is with a single record, all of a volunteer's data is in one place and we do not have a duplication of volunteers in our counts. So when we ask you to do like a phone number or an email address or an address, with this system is set up so that if I put in Tony Flax and my email address and my phone number, the system will automatically pop up and say, hey, there's already a Tony Flex in there. Is this the same one as you're talking about? Well, so it's kind of a fail safe for us. So we are only getting one record. Now, I know when we brought over the other information, there is duplicates in there, but we also have a report we can run to find those duplications. And anytime we put in a new system, it does red flag it for us. So that is important to us so that we make sure that when we're asked what our accountability is, we can say we're on top of it. We're getting good quality answers out of the information that we have. Right now, our single day time entry is really pretty fast and easy. I know some of our state coordinators are having issues with that, but I think we've kind of got it fixed. And if not, let me know and we'll go back to the developers. But I find I enter time for some of the national offices myself, and it doesn't take me any time at all to go in there and do it. I realize that some of you don't do it every day, so it might be a little slower. That's okay, but it is faster than what it was before. We can add time to everybody in a group or a few people in a group with a click of a button. So that's the whole deal. We're trying to get her faster and easier for you guys to use as we go along. And I realize there are some hiccups in that, but I think as we move forward, you're going to see some benefit. We do not have the weekly time entry stuff going yet. That is in the next PI, or that is planned for our part of the next PI. We're really excited about that. So just make it easier for you, for those people that work more than one day a week. We do have dashboards now. Pretty excited about that. Makes for a really nice, quick time, real time data for you. You can go in, the coordinators can go in and see real quickly where they're setting as far as office utilization or numbers of hours and numbers of volunteers that we have already put into the system. So I enjoy the dashboard immensely, especially from a national coordinator spectrum as well. It gives me a good idea where our states are and who do I need to call and ask, hey, do you need some help? What can we do for you? The one that everybody dreads. Okay, guys, I know you dread this. We do too. Part of it. The onboarding and link pass requirements have changed. And those are, I wish I could say they were done changing, but I'm sure they are not. But we're going to keep up with it as best we can. And so that means we are on the phone, we are in email messages and on trainings with HR and Homeland Security on a regular basis. We want to make this as easy as for you as possible and make sure that you have what you need to give to your points of contact in the states for making sure this onboarding gets taken care of. And we're getting better at it, and we're learning more as we go along and do them ourselves as well. But those things have changed. So the reason they have changed is because Homeland Security we do have a presidential directive that says the policy for the common identification standard for federal employees, volunteers, and contractors has to be the same. So in all of that, basically what that means is our volunteers that have a link pass or need access to a computer have to go through the same process that our employees and our contractors do. So we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail here. We came up with some compromises because the last thing I want is for every volunteer to have a link pass card. No, we don't want to go there. So that would just be impossible. I mean, you guys know that it's not reality. It's not functional for us to do that. So we went to bat, and although we do have paperwork coming out of it and some things that we have to do, we working with them to make a compromise so that we don't have to do that for every volunteer, because it's just not feasible. So the other thing that's new is going to be some updated forms. Now, most all of you, if you're, getting applications for volunteers, are familiar with our 301A. That is our application form basically. And we'll talk about it here in a couple more slides, but those forms are not new. They are updated, and they do have an update schedule. And so they were updated back last fall. And so there is some new information on there that we're required to gather. But many of your NRCS forms that you are using today are going to be updated to the FPAC volunteer program forms. So they're not going to be new to you guys because the feel and everything is still going to be the same. We just have to update them so the other agencies can use them as well. And again, this is a benefit to our sister agencies and our sister contacts with the Soil and Water Conservation District. If you guys are helping us use ours and all of this stuff, it's all the same. So we're using these forms and trying to eliminate some of the extra forms that we might have had before, because we can put them onto one form, or we're using another form that already covers that information. So this is one of our big tasks as a team for Sanaz and Eric and I, is to go through every form that's ever been used in Earth Team, and even in FSA and RMA and their previous volunteer programs that they've had. It gives us a way to go through and then build a solid set of paperwork for you that you have to have or need to have, that then can be utilized. And then you're not trying to figure out, okay, do I need this one? Do I need that one? We're trying to organize it down to it's a standard set of information and paperwork that we're using. All right, so the Suite 301 forms. Many times government agencies were going to work together to share and reduce number of forms. So our 301 suite of forms is an example of that. So this suite is actually managed by the National Park Service. So if there's sometimes some questions on there, you're like, why? This doesn't make sense. Well, it's because it's information that another agency needs. But to build these forms, we are on a team called FITV, which is a federal intergovernment team that meets once a month to talk about all things volunteer. And so as a team, although National Park Service manages these forms, as a team, we get to help mandate or help talk about what needs to be on those forms. And again, this is also bringing all of government agencies together, so we're all gathering the same information. There's not a question of what's being gathered. So this set of suites is used by USDA as a whole, the Department of Interior, including the Park Service and Bureau of Land Management. NOAA uses this. The Army Corps of Engineers uses this. If it deals with natural resources, we use this, as a government agency. So again, all across the board, everybody's getting the same information. So the 301 itself, there's 3 forms in this suite. Those got the 301, which is going to be equivalent to an NRCS form that we have. But this is the volunteer application for natural resources, or for natural and cultural resources. This is an optional form for our volunteers, unless they're international volunteers. So when our goal is to eliminate one of our forms and use this one, but we've got to do some work with Homeland Security on that. So right now we have a form in NRCS that looks basically very similar to this 301 that we use as the form. I said, this is the optional form of the 301 suite. We get applications we get this application if somebody's gone online and says, oh, cool, NRCS has volunteers. I want to try to volunteer for them. And they will fill out this form and send it to us. And then we will send it to your state coordinators. So you guys as agency people are probably not going to see this form used very much. I see it, Barbara's going to see it, Laura's going to see it, that sort of thing. So our international volunteers must use the NRCS PER002. Like I said, it's very similar to this, but it already covers some of Homeland Security's requirements. This is another one where we just have to sit down with the International Programs Division and Homeland Security so that we make sure we cover all of those requirements so that we don't get anybody in trouble, because that's the last thing we want to do. The 301A, probably the one you are most familiar with, is our volunteer service agreement. This is required form for us. When we sign up a individual volunteer, or we want to sign up a group, this is where their information goes, their telephone number, their address, all that information is on here. This is also for our students that are under 18. This is where their parents sign. This is where their parents say, okay, I understand my child's under 18 and I give permission for them to be a volunteer. And just like with anything else under 18, we have to have that permission to be able to count their hours. Because, again, that goes back to, are we covering all of the information that we need to? So we don't have to have a separate form for it because it's right here on this 301A. Then we have the 301B. So this is where a lot of confusion comes in because we didn't always use the 301B as the list for our groups. And when our team got together and was reviewing this suite of forms, and we were reviewing all the other forms that we had and trying to reduce forms, we said, okay, this is going to make it real easy. You have to have a list of your volunteers anyways, and they have to sign this saying that they're willing to be a volunteer. So they either have to sign the 301A, or we can put them on the 301B, and it's a sign-in sheet. So you guys have big field days and you have big events. This is your sign-in sheet for your volunteers, is basically what it is. And then you can put them into the tracking system from there. And this, this sheet also gives them permission for photos, and saying that they realize that, they're healthy and that they can volunteer. So when you have a group, and we don't put them in the system as the same way we did before, but we still have our groups. And so if you have a big field day that is a list of, has several volunteers, this is your sign-in sheet, it's 301B. They just have to sign the form saying that they realize that they're volunteering, and they get their address or their phone number, email address, and they do ask for the month and the year of their birth. They do not ask for the day. So we cover any PII issues that they might have being on one form by not asking specifically for that. And we've ran that through our privacy officer and everything to make sure that, what we're saying is true, that they can put the month and the year on there and not be going against PII. So that's what the 301B is. The confusion comes in with the groups. So if I'm going to do a big event today, and my group is going to be Tony's Testers, I have to fill out a 301A that tells the name of the group, Tony's Testers. It tells the information of the group leader. And in your guys' case, a lot of your guys' cases as a conservation district, you might be the group leader and the sponsor. And so it's going to basically say, okay, your office number, your office name, that information on there. And so that's going to cover the information required for a group. Then attached to that in your file that you keep for that group is going to be your 301B, which is your list. And that is all that we require in that case. Also a timesheet, to tell how many hours. Did each person work all the same hours? Did somebody work different hours? Having that information on there is also important so that we can put that into the tracking system to cover those hours. Okay, I got ahead of myself. So required form for groups. This serves as the list and their acknowledgement for being volunteers. So which forms are needed? We have 4 categories of volunteers. Basically, this is where our compromise with Homeland Security came in. So we have 4 different categories in which we put our volunteers based on what we need for paperwork. For a fieldwork volunteer, as an individual, you need the 301A, plain and simple. And you're also going to put a timesheet in there. And we realize that there has to be something that has time in their folder so that we can put it into the tracking system. For a group, you will need a 301A and a 301B. And so this is for fieldwork volunteers. These groups are your big groups that are doing field days, they're doing cleanup days, they're doing education days, whatever the group might be. This is where they fit in because they're never going to be, as a whole, they're not going to be in the office. You're not having them come in, you're not having them do any work on the computer. They're fieldwork volunteers. Their job, their purpose is out there in the field doing field work. Escorted access to facilities. Basically, this is going to be someone that might go in with you, that's going to sit with you, look over your shoulder, but they're not really getting into the PII, and they're not really getting it. They're not on the computer at all. Their access to facilities is very limited, and basically facilities is any government building or government vehicle. So they're not, government building. They're not doing anything. They're more of a fieldwork volunteer, but yet they might be in the office somewhat. They're going to need the 301A. And then because they do have a chance of seeing our PII, they do have to have the annual information security awareness test. This you can get online on our Ag Learn. We do have links to that to where they do not have to have a link pass or e-authentication to get to that test and that training. But if they're going to be in, this is the category that, if you think about it, your people that clean your offices, this is the category that they would fall into if they weren't a volunteer, or if they were, if they would have been a volunteer, same thing. So 301A, which is the application that says they're going to be a volunteer, and then the certificate of annual information security awareness test. All right, then we have those limited unescorted access to your facilities. They might be a student that comes in for an hour a day. You might be working on building a waterway, or I'm from Kansas. I'm not familiar with some of the conservation practices you guys would be using. Outlet terraces, they might be helping you stake something out, that sort of thing. And they have access to our facilities. So you're going to need the 301A. You're going to need that certificate of annual security awareness training because they do CPII. And then, of course, the fingerprints for special agreements. Now, we can get this through a field print process. And I'm not going to get into a lot of details on that today, but we can help them get those taken care of. And the last category is an unescorted all access volunteer. They're the volunteer. They could be your apprentice. They could be somebody that's coming into your office to do maps for you, but they need computer access, and they're going to be on the computer system, and they're going to be They could be a retired NRCS person that's coming in to do work for you, or a retired soil and water conservation district employee that's going to be coming in and doing work for you. They don't need you babysitting them necessarily. They're not, they're going to be there. They're doing their job, but they have to have computer access to do it. So then you need the 301A, the certificate of annual information security, the fingerprints for special agreements, the background investigation, the declaration for federal employment, the 2109, the resume, and the signed IRM3 for computer access. We have all of this information basically on a kind of a fact sheet that can be given to anybody that needs to know what these groups mean and what paperwork that they need. But as you can see here, like I said, we worked very hard to keep a bulk of our volunteers in this field work area, so that we just have to have the basicness of information from them. And we don't have to go clear to the unescorted all access. Need a link pass, need a computer, all of that. We don't have to go that far if we're just having people come in and volunteer, in the field, which is where a majority of our volunteers are. So why so much paperwork? We're the government, right? We like paperwork. No, accountability. I know that you guys are aware of how much emphasis is being put on accountability these days. And that's what it all boils down to. We have to have that paperwork to be accountable, and not be forced into a situation where we have to get everybody a linked pass card. It's for accurate reporting of our volunteers and numbers, because we have a directive that says we're going to implement a standard credentialing process. This shows our standardization of that process. Again, everybody has to be accounted for. We do work hard with Homeland Security so that we don't have to have everybody carrying a link pass card. We don't want that. Like I said, I come from the field. It is 2 hours to my main credentialing office for getting a link pass. Yeah, I'm not having my volunteers go that far for a link pass. It is not worth it. But with the paperwork that we have, like we just talked about with our fieldwork volunteers, all we have to have is that application, basically. So I know that those applications seem like a lot of work, and there's a lot of information on there, and you're usually in a hurry when you're trying to get stuff lined out for a volunteer. But it is very important that we have the minimum of those things filled out, because we don't want to be put into a position where we have to have more. We truly are trying to keep it simple for you guys. And I love this program. I do. I'm sure you can tell by my voice, and I could talk about Earth Team all day long. Just ask Sanaz. But there is so much benefit, not only to us as an agency, but to our volunteers, to help them feel a part of our communities, to help them feel like they're doing something in this day and age where it doesn't feel like we can do a lot. A little bit of ability to volunteer and to do those things can go a long ways in feeling like they're doing something important for our communities. They're doing something important for agriculture. They're helping, if climate change is where they are, they're helping do something out on the land. And our mission is to help people, the basis is helping people help the land when it comes to NRCS. And we have the luxury of the conservation districts being our sister agency and helping us use this program to benefit the communities that we live in and to benefit our volunteers. So the things that you do, we want to recognize, and we want to be able to give awards for, and we want to be able to showcase what you're doing for the good of your community. And so this paperwork, as frustrating as it can be, and we're trying really hard to lessen that frustration, but it's going to get us to where we can do that. I mean, and Barbara can to attest. I come in and I say, okay, Barbara, I have to verify that you have all this paperwork in line, so that when I send it to the chief and the chief asks me if all the paperwork's in line and that everything's on the up and up, I can tell him, yes, sir, it is, because I know my coordinators are doing what they can. I know the people in the field are doing what they can because they want to see results on the land and reward those people for doing good things. And I love that. That's what I love about this program, is that we have the ability to do that. And it's so exciting. And the other thing is it comes with that accountability. And then of course our workman's comp and tort claims, which, is not something we see a lot of, but we do see it. And when we have a claim, all of that paperwork, all of that file has to go to headquarters, and headquarters has to sort that all out with HR and Homeland Security. And so if it is not filled out correctly, we could lose a claim, not be able to pay a claim, in that situation, and then they can come back on us. And we don't want that. We don't want that kind of a relationship with anybody. We want to make sure that we have all of our stuff in order so that these processes can go as smoothly as possible. Because in the situation, not only with work tort claims or workman's comp, but in the situation where we get complaints, somebody's using the government vehicle improperly. They shouldn't be running around in a government vehicle. They're not an employee. If we have our paperwork in order, there's no complaint. There's no basis to that. And again, these are things that, we get calls from investigators on a lot of this stuff, and we have to be able to provide the paperwork to show them that, hey, we're in the right, we're in the clear, we're following policy, we're following guidelines. And so, like I said, the improper use of government vehicles is one. We need pictures of conservation practices, right? I mean, if your public affairs specialist is always asking you for pictures, did you take pictures of that? Do we have a picture of that? That could be something a volunteer could do, but there might be the person that says, hey, wait a minute, you don't work for the government. What are you doing on my place? How did you get permission to be on my place when you didn't talk to me? Hopefully they've called them ahead of time, but they don't always. And so this is one of those things like, hey, I'm an Earth Team volunteer. I am volunteering to take pictures of your conservation practices. And again, this covers everybody in the long run for what we're trying to do. One example here before we move on to questions is that we had an incident this year actually come up, and which a couple of things I believe there was a workman's comp is filed, as well as a complaint about the use of a vehicle. And actually it didn't even go through us as a national team. It went straight to headquarters. And so headquarters had to answer for it. And they had to come back finally to us and say, all right, in policy, it says, the 301A, the 301B is going to be filled out. Is this that form? Or is, this is what we're supposed to be looking, this is what we're looking for, right? And so we say, yeah, that's it. Or no, that's not, what has been asked for. And they see those a lot of times before we ever know what's going on. And in this case, it involved a conservation district or a district conservationist and her family. So the consequences weren't good because the paperwork wasn't filled out properly. And I do not want anybody to get into that situation. So I will help you as much as I can. You have a crack team. in Barbara and Laura and her area coordinators. So if they're asking you for, paperwork, or if there's something that we can do to help, if there's training, to make it easier to get that information or to figure out what is needed versus what isn't needed, please ask. Like I said, I can talk about this all day. This program is that important to me, and it is that important to me that we build back. I mean, I've watched the numbers dwindle between moving over to the business center and not having a leadership team for a couple of years in there, and then going through COVID, hit right in the middle of all of that. And I know that's a big question to everybody. How in the world can we get 100% participation if we're dealing with COVID and can't get back into the office? We have people that are volunteering by going online and looking at our public facing view of our websites for a state and editing, basically proofreading and telling the public affairs specialist and the computer specialist, hey, this needs to be updated. Your link is broke. Are these the people that are still there? Because I know such and such is not there. Any of that updating that needs to be done, they're sitting at home doing it. They're teleworking, volunteering for us. You guys are always asked to write articles. That's another way we can get volunteers. And I cannot stress how much I appreciate the work that our conservation districts, our soil and water conservation districts do for NRCS as a whole, and in helping to utilize the Earth Team program. We can't do, probably half of what we do without you guys and your support and your dedication to what we're doing as far as our mission. It's a testament to your state how well those relationships are working because of what we're seeing come through for awards. And I guarantee you, Barbara is wonderful and Laura is wonderful about making sure those awards applications come in to the national level. That I can count on them when it comes time for awards. So thank you for all that you do to help us use our program, and for you NRCS people that are trying to learn and trying to use the program. I know it takes time to not only train volunteers, but to make sure that we get the information put into the tracking system. And it's getting better and it's getting quicker. And I'm very excited about that. And like I said, bringing on the other agencies, that gives us more opportunities. That gives our students more opportunities to volunteer and come to work for the government as we go forward. So I'm going to quit jabbering because, like I said, I can talk about this all day. Barbara, do we have any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand or put questions in the chat, and I will do whatever I can to answer them.
I've been monitoring the chat and we don't have any questions yet. But I would encourage everyone who's on the call to either put it in the chat. I believe they have the ability to unmute themselves to ask a question. If not, I'll ask Blair or Kendall to correct me on that. Now is your time. You've got the expert right here in front of you. While we're waiting, I have one that I can share to kick off this whole sequence. I'd like to get get more details on how our district partners can access Ag Learn training for volunteers. We were told that they had to get a link pass, which is a little bit complex of a process to get to this. Is that pretty much the case?
No, actually, not that I'm aware of. We can actually do, like I said, we can do this information security awareness, and maybe it's just certain trainings, but I know, I bet you I don't have that where I can pull it up right fast. Let me see here. I have a link. Let me find it here. In one of our sheets that we work with, that's one of our fact sheets actually, Barb. Teams. Oh, and be looking for the new information on the SharePoint. Sanaz has been our lead on our SharePoint site and our websites. So we'll be working on those and getting more information out for those of you that are NRCS, where all that information will be stored in one place so that you can find that as well.
Okay, that's great. We've had a few comments and requests come in while we were talking. The first one is, can we get copies of your slides? I don't see any reason why we can't share that. That's a thumbs up on that. And then another district staff person asked about distributing the forms. We can certainly share those forms with the district team as well. I'll make sure I'm giving them all the right information, because I think we've got the most current ones, but just want to make sure.
Yep, no problem.
The next question is, in Virginia for our group events, we are covered for tour. Do we need to sign up as a group with individual information such as birthday information?
So it will not, in the tracking system, when we put in there, birthday is a required category. And so it will not count. I mean, we cannot put it in there to see it, so it won't count for it won't count towards that office's hours. If they choose not to sign, that doesn't mean you still can't have them as volunteers or that they can't be volunteers. We just can't count their hours towards Earth Team if we do not have that information. So, you know, we have field events or days out, or education days that somebody might be out there and they just don't want to sign up to be an Earth Team volunteer. So nothing to say that they cannot be a volunteer for the conservation district or for another agency that's out there, or just be a volunteer for the event itself. We just can't count their hours. So if we can't put the information into the tracking system, we can't count their hours towards the Earth Team program. That makes sense?
Okay. Next question. Can you
Tony, I'm sorry, I didn't unmute quickly enough. I just wanted to jump in on that. The main point of having the birthday on there, or the year of birth, is so that we know that the volunteer is over 18. Right, so that they don't need parental permission. You know, we don't have a way to verify someone's birthday. If they just put the year in there, you know, and you can add a date, as long as we know that they're over 18, like that's really the goal for why that information is on there. We just want to make sure that there aren't any minors that don't have parental permission. So if that helps at all, sort of the reasoning on that, and we know people don't always fill it in completely, but as long as we're sure that they're over 18, that should be fine, since birthday was specifically listed in the question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. I asked that question, and that is very helpful, because, you know, we have larger events like our farm days down here in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake. Sometimes I have 70 volunteers each day for a 4-day event, and, you know, trying to capture that information, especially a birthday. I guess I could, because I'm working on my volunteer sign up right now. I guess I could have that as a question, you know, are you over 18? You know, possibly share the, you know, the year of birth or something like that. But people are just really hesitant, I found in the past, to provide that type of information. at a blanket event, they're kind of, well, why do they need my birthday? That's kind of weird. But, like you said, maybe if I just put, are you over 18? If you could provide your birth date, that might be helpful.
Can you see my screen with the 301B on it?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess that's the great part. I don't know if you're talking about like pre-registering them to come in or such, but if they are signing in the day of the event, they just have to mark it here.
Okay,
Just write it
so
down.
yeah, my sign up isn't like that. Well, we haven't
Okay.
done that in the past. So I have a sign up where I have my volunteers sign up. Right now they're doing a Google sign up. Generally, I will provide that sign up to the DC, and then he kind of gets that information
From
there.
there.
Right. So
So
I don't know.
are we have a signature anywhere that says they acknowledge that they're being an Earth Team volunteer?
No, because we sign up as the group leader signs up. And so we're talking about the group sign up where somebody would have their name and that person.
Right.
Now we do kind of categorize them differently. I have my master gardeners. Sometimes I have 25 of those, or,
Right.
they have their own sign up, and the beekeepers, and then we have a general sign up. So, but no, I've never seen that form. I've never had that, but that's
Right.
what we pass on to the DC, and I'm assuming they enter all that information. But yeah, once I have that form, I can kind of look at that. It's just a day of. It's very difficult to have a lot of people stopping this, sign up
Right.
with that.
I completely understand. And, it capture as many as you can in that situation. That's the main thing is, and they've gotten to where they want to see the signature of the volunteer acknowledging that they are volunteering. And so like in this form specifically, it's got the project the title of the group and the group name. So we know the 301 covers that information. But this is for the individual volunteer themselves. And like I said, they've gone to asking us to make sure that we have a signature so that the person acknowledges that they are being a volunteer for the Earth Team. It is the reason that we've looked
Specifically for that. Okay.
signature.
So they
Yep.
would do the 301B, and then we need to have a 301A for every volunteer included with that.
No.
Okay.
So you would need one 301A. Let me pull that one up too, so we can talk about this, because this is a very excellent question. And I want to make sure everybody understands. I don't want there to be any confusion. So when it comes to the 301, can you see it now on my screen? Did it come up? Perfect. Okay, so when it comes to the 301A, in this situation where you would have a group, you would just mark that it is a group. You put the name of your group or the group leader in this information. This is the group leader. This is the name of the group is number 2. And then of course the address information. You're not going to have for the group all of the authenticity information in there. You're not going to have that. And then of course, an emergency contact. And then the big part of this is this volunteer service abstract. This is the what they're going to be doing. So if they're going to be running water, if they're going to be helping do whatever, then this position description then needs to be filled out for what the group is going to be doing. So then that covers the group itself as far as the sign up. And then the NRCS person can sign on the back saying that, yep, they understand that this is a group doing this event. Then, and that's it for that one of those. And then we can come in with the 301B, and that is just your sign up that day. So on your registration table or whatever, sign in and you're good to go. And you just have to have however many pages of that you need for each of your volunteers, that we can put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 10 on a page, basically.
About
so
10 on a page.
how many pages that you need to cover all of your volunteers.
So I
Not
have a
everybody
volunteer
has to
just
have
for
one.
this. Yeah. I have a volunteer just for my sign up table. So
Oh, there you
we'll
go.
add that as a duty for someone. But thank you. That was very helpful.
Yes, great. Thank you for your question. So Naz, did you have
Yeah,
something to add?
I just wanted to jump in because you mentioned a couple of groups that are recurring, like master gardeners, beekeepers, right? They only need to do this one time. I mean, you feel free to use it every time as a sign-in sheet if it's a helpful sheet, but as long as they know at some point that, yes, these hours are coming to Earth Team, then that could be a one and done for a group like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful too. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sanaz, for clearing that up, making that clearer. Yeah, exactly. They only have to sign it one time. So we have a lot of friends of conservation groups out there, where the people we go out to the field and our people are helping us in the field or whatever. Again, they just have to sign it one time to say that they're a volunteer. And then we can add hours to them from there. So.
Okay, great discussion. We've had some more questions come in, so I want to make sure we have time for those. Can you speak to recording director and associate director time? Years ago, we were encouraged to track this time and report it to NRCS. Is this still the case?
Okay, so you're talking about your board of directors for your conservation districts? Is that what we're looking at?
Megan, do you want to elaborate?
Sure. If I remember correctly, directors were not really trackable because they were elected to the position, and so my email or my message may have been a little false, but I believe associate directors, because they were not in fact elected to the positions and were really doing it in more of a volunteer capacity, we were encouraged to track their time associated with district events, and it could, I believe it could even be like coming to the board meetings, but that's kind of what I'm looking for is, should we be tracking associate director time? What time is trackable? Board meetings, committee meetings, or only, other activities?
Okay, so we're gonna talk about a couple of different things when it comes to that. Okay, so you can even count your board of directors for certain things. So when it comes to an employee of a conservation district or of NRCS, let's just call it government, a USDA employee, or a board director that is elected, there are certain things that they cannot count time for. The elected official cannot count time for those things that they were elected to do, i.e. their board meetings. That director is supposed to be at that board meeting. They were elected to be at that board meeting. That they cannot count. Their annual meetings, they can't count those. Let's see. But say that we have no-till on the plains. It is a big event. We have a lot of people go to it, and they're going to bring back information to their community that they get from there, whether they're doing a community meeting or they're giving that information back at a conservation board meeting or whatever. They are not elected to go to that. They are not elected to go to that meeting and bring that information back, but they're doing it. In that situation, the time that they're at their meeting can be counted. Okay. And I believe some travel may be able to be counted. If a conservation board member, trying to think of another example. I can get you examples, Barb. I just might think about it a little bit here. We can do that. But those associate directors, so they're just coming, they're not elected to do any of that. I take that that's what you're talking about, Megan. If they're not elected to do it, count their time.
They're just volunteers. They were not elected to serve in a specific capacity.
Perfect. Please, please, please count their time as volunteers. Yes, ma'am. I was going to pull up here. That's not what I wanted. Yeah. So I have I have even got requests from people when I was a state coordinator about who our district directors were, and it came from the state, the soil and water conservation district, about how many hours that our directors volunteered. They wanted a report on that. So we had to go through and find all that information. So yes, that's awesome, because there is a lot of things that our directors do that aren't necessarily something they're elected to do, but that we do want to provide, provide them that they did, that they did it, show that they're okay. Stumbling over my words here now.
We're actually coming to the end of our assigned time, so I wanted to reach out to Blair to see how you guys want to proceed. Should we just continue to ask the questions so that everybody can hear, or would you prefer that we answer them later? Just keep track of them and send out that information.
Barbara, I'm still here too. This is Kendall.
Oh.
I popped off for a bit and came back on. We have the Zoom open for a bit if you wanted to stay on the line, and if Tony can give a few more minutes to maybe try and answer them here, but also happy to forward questions on to Barbara if there's an FAQ that we can help with later too. But thank you for those who did join, who can't stay on, but feel free if you are interested to try to tag on for a bit longer if you'd like.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
and if we do get more questions later on down the line, or if somebody sends you questions, please feel free. If you can't answer them yourself, or if you're not sure, send them our way. We'll answer them for you. No problem. So here's this NRCS, or other government employees and district officials. The official wording is they may, because the conservation and district officials may serve as volunteers. Their activities must always be clearly voluntary and beyond the scope of what they were hired, elected, or appointed to do. And so if there is a question, so say somebody says, so we had a tree planting day, and our district, two of our district board members decided that they were just, instead of having them delivered and causing the delivery charge, they were just going to go pick them up and bring them back to us. We've had that happen out here. As long as your state conservationist says that's a clearly voluntary thing and he's okay with it, count it. I'm good with it. Basically, it must be without compensation, and of course may not be used to displace an employee of the department. So there are a lot of those type of hours out there that we can use and count.
We want to count all of the countable hours that are out there. Have another question related to underage volunteers. Says, so what happens with a group of high school students under 18 showing up to a field day or tree planting event?
So as long as we have permission for them to be a volunteer from their parent or guardian, count the hours. If we don't have permission from their parent or guardian, we can't count their hours. So, and I don't know, again, I would probably ask your state conservationist what they're most comfortable with. When I was working in Kansas, we have used like the school, if like, so FFA is coming out to help and we didn't get them the paperwork in time. They have printed off their copy for their kid, kids have to have something signed that says, yes, they can participate in this event. We've taken those signatures as well, a copy of those signatures as well. The main thing is that we have a there is a signature saying that the parents know that they're there and that's what they're doing.
The next question is related to volunteer efforts of NRCS employees.
Okay.
Can that be recorded as for team hours? So I think there are some nuances that need to be shared on that.
There are, but again, 428.22 says as long as their activities are clearly voluntary and beyond the scope of what they were hired to do, we can count it. Now, so a question I get asked a lot is, okay, so we had a conservation board meeting and it was after hours and they didn't want to ask if they just were gonna volunteer to come. They didn't ask. Can I count that? No, you can't count it. They decide, you know, a district conservationist decides that he's gonna stay 3 or 4 extra hours on a Saturday to get something done for a program. No, we can't count that. However, if they're doing something that is voluntary, that meets the impact of our mission, so helping people help the land, and NRCS is involved in it, then we can count it. So one thing that we've talked about over and over, and in fact, we got a meeting later today, so I might be speaking out of turn here, but when it comes to the People's Garden, you know, a lot of our last round, a lot of our service centers had their own People's Garden right outside their shop. You know, they might have had a planting or whatever, but if they want to gonna like help keep that up after hours, they're not required to have a People's Garden. That's something that they've decided to do and they're going to do it after hours. We can count that. Feds Feeds Family, if they're going to take all of the food that they gathered after hours to the local pantry or whatever, you can count that time.
Yeah, that brings up a good question or clarification that I want to make as well. We've got new guidelines for gleaning, and the staff cannot be doing that on their work time. They have to take leave and they have to take their personal vehicles, and that's unfortunate, but that's how it's truly a volunteer effort.
Yes. And so if you have a gleaning event like that, and you know, again, okay, it through your state conservationist, and as long as your state conservationist is okay with them being counted, then go for it. I highly suggest, one things I highly suggest is that you make a list of questions that you want, that you think might be pliable, or might be plausible as efforts for a volunteer program, and take that list to your state conservationist and say, hey, as far as we're concerned, as far as we've looked at, these look like events that we would use volunteers for. Are you okay with that? Are you comfortable if something would happen supporting this? And, you know, most of them are going to say, yeah, no problem. But I one of the things came up back in my younger days. We were doing burning, and on the weekends, a group of us that were, you know, qualified NRCS people and had experience and everything, we would have people ask us if we would come put on demonstrations for burning or come help them burn. And for a while we were allowed to, and we could, you know, we do demos on government time and do that. And then it's like our state conservation is like, nah, no, wait a minute. You're not going to be the one lighting the fire. And then there was some accidents that happened with some people on some four-wheelers, and they were killed. And he's like, okay, I'm not comfortable with this anymore. We're not going to count hours doing that. So, you know, running a chainsaw during cleanup, you know, some of those things that they might not be comfortable with supporting, but they might be comfortable with other aspects of it. So if you have questions, ask. And as long as you have their support and they're comfortable with that being a volunteer activity, go for it. Sorry, I was
Great to
trying to
hear.
find a page here.
All right, next question. I may have missed it, but can't groups be signed up and recorded under the group and not as individuals?
So no, they have to be put in as an individual because every person has to have their own identification in the tracking system. Well, let me get out of this. Might be easier to show you. So in the tracking system, this is one of the things that we were tasked with, was to make sure that we were counting them as accurately as possible. So every person has to be in the system as an individual. We can assign them to groups. We can give them the status of being with a group. We just can't only have them in a group. So for those of you that have never seen the inside of our VTS, this is what it looks like. I can go in here and I can search for volunteers, and I'm in here as a volunteer. So when you input a volunteer, they get their own record. And so they actually get a unique record identification number. And so if I can't find you by going in and typing your name, if I know your ID number, I can go in there and search for you by that as well. But as you can see down here at the bottom, then every time entry that I've had is put in here. And this says Graham County Friends of Conservation. If I would also have like a Brooks County Friends of Conservation or a field day, then those timesheets would all show up right here. So if I come to you and I said, Barbara, I need to know all my hours I've volunteered, you can go to this page right here and get all of those hours and see all of those timesheets for me. And like I said, this is, you know, I'm part of this group, this volunteer group. We can assign offices or we can assign groups to a volunteer. So if I was doing something for the Graham County Friends of Conservation, and then I came out to visit you, Barbara, and I wanted to do a field day you guys are having in the Chesapeake Bay, I can be in that group too, but all of my hours have to be associated to my record, so that we know they're all together. So the answer to your question, that's a long way to answer the question that you have, is no, we have to put everybody in here. And this goes back to that standardization of credentials from Homeland Security.
I think I just have one last question. So
Okay.
We're actually wrapping up pretty quickly. What if there is a related event that the supervisor won't approve for during the regular tour of duty? Could one volunteer for that and report it as our team volunteer hours?
No, because it would be something that you could do if your supervisor approved it during your tour of duty. So maybe I'm doing a wrong example, but say you wanted to go to a field day in the next county. And is that a good example?
Travis, do you want to expound on that? Oh, he's saying yes.
Okay, perfect. So you want to go to the field day in the next county. That is something that you can do as an employee. Your supervisor just doesn't want to approve it for whatever reason. That's still something that as an employee you can do. So no, you can't count it as a volunteer time.
Well, any last calls before we close today? All right, well, I want to thank Tony and Sanaz for joining us today and sharing a lot of great information about how the program has changed and the direction that we're headed. Also want to thank Kendall and Blair for hosting this session and helping to bring together both the district staff and the NRCS staff for a joint training. Because we are a team in this effort and we work together on so many projects and activities that, I mean, we couldn't do it without our district partners for sure. So we definitely want you on board. We want you to understand why we're doing what we're doing and hopefully continue to work with us down the road. So with that, I think we can wrap up for today. Thank you so much. And please feel free to reach out to me or the 4 area volunteer coordinators if you have any follow-up questions. And if I can't answer it, as Tony said, she's willing to answer it as well. So have a great day and a great weekend. And we hope to be hearing from you soon.